think we have a fair representation from our HashiCorp family and a few people from our normal, from a meetup outside of the organization. So thank you everyone for joining and welcome to the meetup, financial services meetup. This is our first meetup for this year, for 2022. We've had a little bit of a break since our session last year, where we focused on multi-cloud security and zero trust networking. So today we'll be focused on HashiCorp Consul product, a service mesh solution that's providing a full feature control plane with service discovery and so on. We have a couple of speakers today, right? So Guy Sarah is our field CTO, and we'll talk a little bit about the use cases in financial services for Consul. And then we'll hear from Nina, who's our director of product management for Consul, and then we'll see a little bit of a demo for what Consul looks like. Please feel free to ask questions, whether it's in chat on Zoom, or go ahead and unmute and speak up if you have any questions while we're presenting. Guy, I'll pass to you, and we can start.
Thanks, Ilya. Yeah, thank you. Hi, everybody. So I have a few slides. This is, I didn't know we had a demo. That's great to hear. I have a few slides to help drive the discussion. It's not a pitch. It's meant to be a user group discussion more than a presentation, but it's just to help kind of drive the flow. Let me share a screen. Should see it. Yeah. Basically, just to put a little bit of context. So today's session is all about Consul, all about network. Right, and this is the swim lane here, the magenta color, I would say. And it's kind of part of a bigger picture, right? And typically, organization starts bottom left and kind of go right and up as they evolve in their modernization and cloud adoption transformation. And then, once you have some automation, you have managed secrets management to some extent. Then you look at the network as the big piece to tackle. And generally speaking, we kind of break Consul into three main use cases, right? The service discovery, network middleware or network infrastructure automation, and the service mesh. I'm not going to cover all the use cases. I have slides for all the use cases, so if there are questions, or if there's interest, we can dig into all of them. I'm just going to talk a little bit in more details on the network middleware automation. We also call it the Consul Terraform Sync, CTS, because I think it's for me it's probably the most interesting. Also in the context of FSIs or large traditional banks, right? If you kind of break the world into two, new, small, cloud native challenger banks who are cloud first are in a different camp. But if you think of traditional large organizations and traditional banks who have significant on-premises footprint, the network middleware automation, Consul Terraform Sync, becomes a real enabler for innovation. So I want to kind of talk more about it. Consul, very briefly, right? I mean, the core of Consul is basically a distributed key value store. And you can think about, if you're familiar with Zookeeper, I think of a modern implementation of key value, similar to Zookeeper. And then you can implement utilities on top of it, like leader election or semaphore or distributed lock and so on. And then HashiCorp implemented on top of the key value store a few network automation tools or use cases. So I'll go a little bit into the NIA, network infrastructure automation. The challenge here And I'm going to skip these decks. I want to show it here, right, in kind of in this picture. And the challenge with network automation, even most organizations have spent some time automating network deployment, right? Network provisioning, network maintenance, network configuration, with one tool or the other. Some organizations are still hitting consoles or like screens consoles, not console. But most organizations have automated to some extent. However, the challenge now is that automation is kind of out of bound or completely detached from application lifecycles or from the delivery lifecycle. So if you think of proactive or reactive events that applications go through, it will be a new version, it will be a proactive scale out, or it will be a reactive failure in an HA scenario, right? All those events that kind of happen at the application side, at the runtime side, do not propagate to the infrastructure. And configuring, provisioning, managing, extending the network becomes a separate task. So there's this kind of, and it's really apparent when you deal with platforms at these large organizations, large banks. You'll see platform teams with very good automation going all the way up to the network. So you'll have applications and you'll have, storage automated, you'll have Kubernetes clusters all automated to make the feedback loop and the deployment instantaneous. But then when the network is involved, when you need to grow and shrink the cluster, then you are back to the ITIL, raise a ticket and wait for 8-12 weeks to poke a firewall or to update the global load balancer, right? It's really apparent there. And Consul, Terraform Sync, NIA, or CTS is all about solving that problem. And I'll kind of give a few slides with arrows on how that works, right? And if you think of, let me just move think of the power, right? And going back to my initial slide, think of the power that we take from the fact that we have already kind of created enough automation and enough infrastructure as code when we now go up to the network layer, or to the network automation. And then the mix of Consul and Terraform. So you think of Consul on the left side, having that awareness, having runtime and application visibility with health knowledge. And then on the right side, you have Terraform that basically can talk to anything on the planet. And specifically in the network space, it can talk to firewalls and load balancers and various appliances that exist. If it's there, it probably has a Terraform provider. And the marry of the two is what makes the trick, right? And we'll kind of look at this, how this looks in reality. CTS sits there and watches, right? Key value store, events. That's the fundamental of Consul. So CTS kind of connects to Consul and subscribes to events or watches for events on changes for services, for applications in the runtime space. And then that box represents something that happens. That could be a proactive update of an instance, a scaling event, a failure event. So regardless of the activity, it kind of goes and happens in reality, and Consul has a view, right? Consul realized that the process is now gone, or a machine is deleted and Consul is updated, or a scale of a service happens and there's a new instance of a service running on a box that needs to serve traffic. So event goes into Consul Terraform Sync, which then basically sends a notification, triggers a deployment activity on Terraform that will now close the loop. So if you think, and then to end the cycle, CTS also has a response from Terraform to have a holistic view of what has been provisioned where and how. And basically the power of Consul running on any technology, any type of runtime, any cloud, on-prem, off-prem, Kubernetes or legacy or VMs, bare metals, containers, and then kind of delegating these requests to Terraform, that, as I said before, basically speaks to anything on the planet, right? Specifically in there are a few logos here from the networking space. It's a very, very appealing story. And it doesn't have to be Terraform, right? I mean, if you have invested in automation that isn't Terraform, I mean, here we kind of call out Ansible, but it could be your own, homegrown automation scripts or whatever it is. You could plug in a Terraform, a homegrown Terraform provider. So it doesn't have to be Terraform directly speaking with your network gear, meaning you don't have to use Terraform in its entirety to be able to benefit from this integration. You'll have to put it there so that Consul can talk through Terraform to the appliances. That's basically the CTS. I think we also, so that's that's kind of the few slides that I wanted to show on Consul Terraform Sync. I've seen a few platforms that would extremely value that kind of setup at large banks. Hey Itai, how are you? So that's basically the out of the 3 use cases. So we have the service discovery, service registry, the NIA, and the service mesh. Right, I kind of zoomed in a little bit into the NIA. Happy to talk about the other use cases or kind of like just open for discussion on anything that I described so far. And I don't want to continue and kind of present and pitch. I'd rather have this as a discussion with all of us.
So I'll start with asking questions, right? So we're talking about FSIs, and like you mentioned the ITIL problem, or the way usually this works around provisioning firewall rules or whatnot. How do we go and convince our network teams now to let the automated tool do this for them? Something that's controlled from, more on the application side of the house. Like, has this been a problem with other FSIs? Because I find this like amazing, right? Technology-wise, it's very appealing. It's the process that concerns me.
No, I agree. Totally agree. And you kind of build you need to build on existing automation, right? And like think about the network ops team that have gone and automated. Let's assume they use Terraform. Why not? It's a common product. If they use Terraform in their little bubble, then the discussion is who triggers Terraform, when and how, right? That's but you're right. It's going to be collaboration between different teams.
Right. We have to find a way to sell it to them, basically, right? And that's the issue here. Okay.
Yeah. One other thing I can add, if they are already using Terraform, I know Guy showed how it happens automatically, but there's actually an approval loop in there that we have inserted. So if they're uncomfortable, or at least at the beginning uncomfortable with a process like that, they can look and see what changes we want to make with Terraform. And maybe it's the same change they were trying to do, or they would have done 6-8 weeks later once they actually got to the ticket. But that's a way of getting them to at least understand the changes that are being made. And it'll obviously, since there's an approval loop, it's not going to be real time, but it'll still be more real time than the 8 weeks or 10 weeks they would have taken otherwise. I think the other thing to think of is that process of doing it manually. Part of the reason why it takes so much time is because they check and double check, and they have these mega spreadsheets where things are kept. It's also very error prone, right? And then if something goes, and there's approval loops in there, but if something goes wrong, the price of that is enormous, right? You have a network down, you have some service not reachable, and some really bad things have happened. I think if we can present to them that what the automation is taking away is the human error, right? And the checking and double checking and approval and all these other steps that are needed. And start small. If you're not comfortable, do it in a small part of your network, do it in a trial environment, put in the approval loops, and then see the power of it. And then you don't have to be doing what is essentially a lot of very tedious work to make sure that you don't break something, which an automation tool can do for you. And then hopefully they can spend their time doing real networking tasks, as opposed to every time an app team wants to add another instance of a service, they have to go figure out how to change the firewall rules, as an example, to enable that to happen.
Yeah, I just want to extend a little bit about what Nina said. Why is it so like spreadsheets and all that? It's because of that decoupling, which is by design. If you manage a firewall and you have a bunch of consumers of that firewall, up until now, there's no way to link application or runtime flows into these firewall rules. So, you end up in a situation where you have something that you don't know if it's used or unused. And if you change something, how do you know that you're not going to break anyone's flow? And before you know it, it's not just the ITIL and ticketing process, which kind of I use as an excuse. It's also the firewall owners, the network ops, as a risk mitigation process. They would go and schedule these on maintenance window, and they will cluster them and checkouts of applications, and make sure that all other applications can check out, so the rules didn't do anything unintentional. Because there's no link. But if you think like Consul and the runtime, whichever runtime it is, know better what needs to run where. And then if you trust it, if you don't trust it, you can kind of look, observe, and use that gating. But if you trust that model, it will know better which rules are relevant, which aren't, right? And can add and remove more dynamically, right? It's basically the promise of this setup.
Great. Thank you for that question, and so great discussion. Anyone else? Any other questions you guys wanted to bring up before we go and ask Nina to take over? All right, Nina, I'll ask you if you can share your screen, and we can continue. Thanks, Itai.
Okay. Can you all see my screen?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So thanks for spending your afternoon or evening, whatever it happens to be, with us. I definitely appreciate it. So Guy spoke about one particular use case of Consul in details. I'm going to talk a little bit more broadly about what Consul is about and what it's helping you solve, right? So essentially, Consul is designed to help organizations discover and securely connect any service in any environment. And I don't think this is a surprise to anyone on here. The shift that is happening as people are adopting the cloud, and as well as adopting modern dynamic infrastructure, especially for traditional enterprises that used to have all footprints in on-prem environments, and now that the system of records maybe are moving, the system of interactions are maybe moving to the cloud. What do you do for networking, right? That is really the challenge that you're trying to now overcome, is how you basically stitch your networking today between your dedicated static infrastructure on-prem and then the more modern dynamic infrastructure that is running in the cloud. And there are many reasons that people are moving to the cloud. I'm not going to go to all of it, but you want to get to some of these goals here, get to progressive delivery, consistent security model, and of course, being able to have connectivity everywhere. So this is really what Consul is designed to solve. How do you do networking in this modern world where your infrastructure, where you're running your applications is split between on-prem and in the cloud, which is very common for most financial services, actually for most organizations, because it all started with all on-prem and now today in the cloud. And so that's what service networking is about. And really there are 4 pillars, right? First, discovering what services are running and the health of the services. Then securing it. So any communication between services, especially if you think of it, not all in your data center, but some running in cloud and some running on-prem, is authorized and encrypted correctly. The third one is really around automation, like are the new services or new instances available and scalable without, a lot of operator intervention. And then finally, how do you control the flow of traffic in and out of this large virtual network, which doesn't really have any clean perimeters anymore? So when you think of these pillars, there are multiple people who are solving some pieces of this problem. But if you where HashiCorp Consul is different is that all these are all covered by the capabilities inside Consul. So we have in Consul service discovery and health monitoring that takes care of the service discovery piece, the service mesh aspect, which lets you secure service to service communication, the automation piece, which Guy went into details with the network infrastructure automation and NIA. And finally, the latest and greatest, which we actually betaed as of yesterday, is controlling access using the Consul API gateway. And so really, Consul is the unified networking solution. So it works on any cloud, any platform, any runtime to enable organizations to create this centralized control plane for discovering services wherever they are and securely connecting those services together. So let me just keep going fast. So just deep diving into some of the different capabilities of Consul. First is just the service discovery aspect. Everything within Consul is built on top of the service discovery, where services are being registered into Consul, and then the health of them are being monitored. And essentially, all this information is then used to track what services are available for someone else to access at any given time. Built on top of the service discovery, then we have the service mesh. So it is used to basically secure communication between services where all the communication is authorized and encrypted. And you can run it on pretty much any platform. So it runs on Kubernetes in runtime. So it runs on Kubernetes, it runs on VMs, you can run it on bare metal. We have it running on ECS. So pretty much anywhere where you're running applications, you can run Consul Service Mesh together with it. And then NIA piece, which Guy went into deeply, basically by pairing Consul and Terraform, you can automate specific networking tasks. You can review changes. We were talking about that. And essentially get greater compliance with how network infrastructure is maintained, right? So this is obviously also built on top of the service discovery and the catalog that Consul has, but the real-time ability to then update network infrastructure that comes in is a unique capability that's only available within Consul. And then the last piece of it is controlling access. Consul API Gateway is basically designed as a way to control access to the service mesh or any Consul deployment and helping basically control access in and out of the mesh, right? So that the point of entry is now controlled with the Consul API Gateway. You can use it as a centralized traffic management, as well as routing requests based on the metadata available. And then Consul itself has a very broad ecosystem. Even though it does a lot, we don't do everything ourselves. So it is built to be extensible and pluggable. As an example, on the network infrastructure automation use case, basically we work with pretty much the most commonly used network infrastructure providers, and then use Consul and Terraform Sync to automate their equipment, right? So it's the leading firewall vendors, the leading load balancer vendors, folks like Cisco who are in our ecosystem for that. And then on the other side, when it comes to platform, we run on pretty much any kind of platform that you can think of on any cloud, and have all the integrations that will let you run basically Consul as a service in your own environments. Just a quick list of some customers. I know this is a financial, the users, most people on this call are from the financial segments. I wanted to point out a few. You can see Stripe, they are a newer financial services company, but their whole service depends on Consul. There are public use cases. You can read about their use case. Capital One is another, actually a whole HashiCorp stack company. There is others in this these are all public use cases, but in terms of just companies in the financial sector, pretty much like the names that I can't say here, but these are all well-known names, right? These are like companies that you would see having ATMs, around the corner from you. These are companies that are big in transaction processing. So if you name it, financial services companies are essentially using Consul for one or multiple of its capabilities in their infrastructure. I'm going to skip over that, but you have it available. The interesting thing about Consul is not just its own service networking capability, but how it works with the HashiCorp stack to really deliver solutions that you're looking at, right? So whether it's a zero trust security that everyone is trying to deploy and basically get to a point where you trust no one and basically authorize who gets access to things, to the infrastructure automation piece, which we talked about in details earlier, or how we work with application delivery. And then before I hand it back off for the demo that's coming up, I wanted to talk briefly about the HashiCorp Cloud Platform. So Consul and other services from HashiCorp is obviously available in a form where you can run and manage it yourself. But we also have what is called the HashiCorp Cloud Platform, or HCP, available, where our products are available as a managed service for you to just use, as opposed to like run and manage it yourself. Right? And so that's the vision. Is essentially you can do push button deployment, and you can fully manage your infrastructure. It is a multi-cloud, but a single workflow. Right? And so Consul is also available as a managed service within the HashiCorp Cloud Platform, and you can use it. This is going okay. You can basically use it to essentially discover, secure by default, and use it to monitor and track any service that you are running. And so really, this is the use cases of HCP Consul itself. Like Consul, you have service discovery and health monitoring, and then you have service mesh, right? Both of these are available. Coming shortly will be the CTS as a service use case that's not available, but something you should see coming from us. And then really the benefits of a managed service, like any other managed service, is the operational burden is not on you as the user. And also in terms of as a result, you'll see improved productivity and reduction in risk. Because we manage and take care of the infrastructure pieces of it for you. You just use it. And so it's really easy to get started. We'll show you a demo here shortly on how easy it is to work with HCP Consul if you wanted to use that as opposed to deploy and manage it yourself. And that's it. So I am going to stop here and see if anyone had any questions. If not, I'll hand it to Ilya for the demo that we're going to show you for HCP Consul.
Okay. Thank you. Is anyone have any questions? Please don't hesitate to chime in. If not, I will share my screen, and we can see. You can see a little bit of it's a recorded demo. We'll share the recording is on that as well. But can you guys see my screen? You know.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. In this demo, we'll see how you can use the new Consul UI feature to simplify an end-to-end deployment. I'm on the overview page of the Consul, HCP Consul tab. Clicking on deploy with Terraform. There are multiple options here. First is you can set up an end-to-end deployment in a new VPC or use an existing VPC in one of these 3 runtimes. In this demo, I'm going to choose EKS. Let me select my region. I've already set up my VPC and my subnets. So let me find the values. Here's my VPC. Route table, ID. And I'm going to copy the 2 public subnets. Once I do that, I have to generate a service principal and key for the Terraform configuration that the UI generates based on the input to authenticate with HCP. So when I click here, the UI generates the service principal and key, the client ID and the secret. All I have to do is copy that and use it in my remote terminal. And then at this point, the UI generated the Terraform config required to deploy a EKS cluster with Consul clients and an example app in an existing VPC that I specified in those corresponding subnets. So all I have to do is copy the code. I've already installed Terraform. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this in a file, Terraform file, and just run Terraform. And while it's running, it will take about 20 minutes to complete the end-to-end deployment. And at the end, the Terraform output will show the URL for the demo application, as well as accessing the Consul UI. So the Terraform run is complete after about 20 minutes. There are a few outputs from Terraform. The Consul URL is the URL to access the Consul UI. In order to access the Consul UI, there is a token required, and this token here, the Consul root token, provides the access to the UI. The next is the HashiCorp URL. This is the URL to access the HashiCorp app that get deployed along with EKS. The last is the kubeconfig file name. Let's look at the pods created in EKS. First, I set the kubeconfig to point to the current cluster. And then, as we can see, there are 3 Consul nodes deployed in 3 Consul clients deployed in 3 nodes. And along with that, the HashiCorp app got deployed. And as you can see, the sidecar envoy is automatically injected for service mesh use case. Now, we have to access the root token, and the output for that, and the command for that is Okay, now we have the token. Let's go to the Consul UI. Okay, now let's get the token. So as you can see, multiple services are showing up here. The HashiCorp app services essentially, along with the Ingress Gateway. The Ingress Gateway provides the interface or gateway to accessing the HashiCorp app from external network. So let's now look at the HashiCorp app. All right, now we can order a cup of HashiCorp's coffee. So in essentially about 20 minutes, we have completed an end-to-end deployment, connecting to your VPC, installing a new EKS cluster in an existing subnet and in an existing VPC, deploying a HashiCorp app so that you can get started with service mesh. Thanks for listening.
You can see how easy it is to deploy and have it running. Obviously, a lot of it can be automated. A lot of it can be providing value to you very quickly in your environment. Did you have anything you wanted to add to that demo or anything that you wanted to comment on? I think that's pretty straightforward, simple sort of a way to
Yeah, I think the reason to show the demo is really to show while we encourage people to use Consul whichever way that's most convenient for them. I think especially for getting started, it is really, really easy. Like within the demo obviously didn't go through the whole thing, but in roughly 20 minutes from the time you start to roughly 20 minutes, you can essentially have Consul up and running, connected to your app, and be able to secure the service to service communication. Right? So really easy getting started experience. Of course, we'd like people to run it like that in production and let us manage it for you. But understand that it's not feasible everywhere. And also, not just because of your own requirements, but also because of where you might be running, because HCP Consul is only available in AWS right now. But yeah, the whole experience of using the service networking tool within your environment, gets simplified enormously if you choose to run it as a managed service being managed by us rather than doing it yourself. So that's would be my pitch on why to do it. But we definitely encourage and support you whichever direction you choose to go based on your requirements.
I think, I've seen a heavily regulated organization attempt to do something similar. It can take months of approvals to even just get the trial environments or even to, get any kind of a POC going. This way, you can stand up something and try it and get to a functional solution very, very, very quickly. So it's a pretty cool tool to try. All right. So I think I wanted to open up to any other questions that may be coming from you guys. I know we have a few more people on the line. That if you have any questions, we're happy to take them. If not, I think this is what we wanted to show and talk about today. Anything else? Guy, you're muted.
Yeah, any questions from anyone? Any thoughts? Like, does this content topic depth make sense? Anything else that you'd want to see or hear? Okay.
If not,
So-
we will share the recording. Also share some additional information on Consul itself, and if there's a few interesting things that are coming out. Please stay tuned, and feel free to reach out after the session. And if you have any questions, any follow-up questions, we're happy to have a conversation as well. If nothing else, thank you very much.
I just want to close with that movie. Yeah, just networking is a complicated topic, and I'd like just to close with this. Sorry, what is? Hang on a second. My screen is. My screen wasn't playing. I think my sharing is not. I think it's a nice, cool movie, which I want to show. Let me try once again.
It is not playing nice with you today.
Nope, no, not playing ball.
All right. We'll share the movie as a follow-up too. How about that? All right. Thank you, everyone, and thank you for the questions. Thank you for joining, and we'll look forward to seeing you in our next session.
All right, thanks. Have a great day.
Bye.
Door, the
Thanks,
door, the door behind the door.